Borders are a quintessential part of human civilization, yet they are paradoxical. They exist to divide, but they also connect. They separate peoples and cultures, yet they often emerge from shared histories and mutual understandings. The concept of borders is not merely about geography or politics. It is deeply intertwined with human identity, power, and survival. To understand why we build borders, we must journey through history and explore their evolution, from the earliest territorial demarcations to the complex and often fraught frontiers of our modern world. Long before humans built fences or walls, nature provided its own borders. Mountains, rivers, deserts, and oceans served as natural boundaries, defining territories and influencing human settlement patterns. The Nile River, for example, functioned as a natural border for ancient Egypt, fostering a distinct civilization along its banks, while limiting incursions from surrounding deserts. Similarly, the Himalayas have long defined the cultural and political separation between the Indian subcontinent and Central Asia. However, natural borders were not always sufficient to satisfy human needs. As communities transitioned from nomadic lifestyles to settled agricultural societies, the idea of territoriality took root. In Mesopotamia, the world's first cities arose within delineated spaces marked by canals and walls. The ancient Sumerians, for instance, built mud brick walls around cities like Uruk, not only to defend against invaders, but also to signify ownership and control. These walls symbolized an emerging understanding of borders as human-made constructs tied to security, identity, and governance. As societies grew in complexity, so too did their borders. The rise of empires, large multi-ethnic entities spanning vast territories, ushered in a new era of border-making. The Roman Empire provides a compelling example. While the Romans expanded their dominion through military conquest, they were acutely aware of the need to define and defend their limits. The empire's boundaries, such as Hadrian's Wall in Britain and the limes along the Rhine and Danube rivers, served dual purposes. They protected the empire from external threats and projected Roman power. Hadrian's Wall, built in the 2nd century CE, was not merely a defensive structure, it was a statement of imperial authority. Stretching 73 miles across northern Britain, the wall marked the edge of Roman territory, separating civilized Roman Britain from the barbarian tribes to the north. Yet borders like these were not impermeable. Trade, cultural exchange, and diplomacy often flowed across them, revealing the porous and dynamic nature of even the most heavily fortified frontiers. The Great Wall of China, another monumental border, tells a similar story, constructed over centuries by various Chinese dynasties. The wall was designed to protect against nomadic invasions from the north. But like Hadrian's Wall, it also functioned as a psychological barrier, reinforcing a sense of Chinese identity and distinguishing the empire from its neighbors. These examples illustrate how borders, while ostensibly defensive, are deeply entwined with the assertion of political and cultural hegemony. Borders are not always physical. Throughout history, religious and cultural differences have often acted as invisible boundaries, shaping human interaction and conflict. The medieval period offers numerous examples of such divides. The Crusades, for instance, were waged along a religious border between Christendom and the Islamic world. While the campaigns themselves were marked by violence and conquest, they also facilitated the exchange of ideas, technologies, and goods, blurring the very boundaries they sought to enforce. In South Asia, the partition of British India in 1947 exemplifies the tragic consequences of imposing borders along religious lines. The division of the subcontinent into Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan was intended to resolve religious tensions, but instead led to one of the largest migrations in history. Millions were displaced, and communal violence claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. The enduring legacy of this border highlights the dangers of oversimplifying complex cultural landscapes in the pursuit of political solutions. The modern concept of borders is inextricably linked to the era of colonialism. European powers in their quest for global dominance, carved up vast territories with little regard for existing ethnic, linguistic or cultural boundaries. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 85, during which European powers divided Africa into colonies, epitomizes this phenomenon. Arbitrary lines drawn on maps by colonial administrators created artificial states, sowing seeds of conflict that persist to this day. Post-colonial borders often became sites of tension and violence as newly independent nations grappled with the legacies of colonial rule. In Africa, the division of ethnic groups across national boundaries contributed to conflicts like the Rwandan genocide. Similarly, in the Middle East, borders drawn by European powers after the fall of the Ottoman Empire ignored the region's complex tapestry of ethnic and religious identities, fueling decades of instability. In the contemporary era, globalization has challenged traditional notions of borders. Economic interdependence, technological advances, and the movement of people across national boundaries have blurred the lines between states. The European Union represents an ambitious attempt to transcend borders, allowing for the free movement of goods, services, and people among its member states. Yet, even within the EU, the resurgence of nationalism and debates over migration reveal the enduring tension between the ideals of open borders and the realities of sovereignty and security. Despite the forces of globalization, the 21st century has witnessed a resurgence of border building. The United States-Mexico border wall, a symbol of contentious political debate, underscores the complex interplay of economic, security, and identity in modern border policies. Proponents argue that such barriers are necessary to prevent illegal immigration and drug trafficking, while critics contend that they perpetuate xenophobia and ignore the root causes of migration. The plight of refugees and displaced persons further complicates the issue. According to the United Nations, over 100 million people were forcibly displaced by the end of 2022, driven by conflict, persecution, and environmental disasters. Borders often become flashpoints in these crises, as nations struggle to balance humanitarian obligations with domestic concerns. The Mediterranean Sea, for example, has become a perilous border for migrants seeking refuge in Europe, while the Rohingya crisis has highlighted the devastating impact of border policies on vulnerable populations. Climate change is emerging as a new driver of border challenges. Rising sea levels, desertification, and extreme weather events are displacing communities and creating climate refugees. Pacific island nations like Tuvalu face existential threats as their very territories are at risk of disappearing. Meanwhile, disputes over water resources and habitable land are likely to exacerbate tensions between nations, making borders increasingly contested spaces in the decades to come. At their core, borders reflect a fundamental human paradox. They are built to separate us, yet they often bring us closer together. Trade routes like the Silk Road, which crossed numerous borders, facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures, shaping civilizations along the way. Even in conflict, borders have the potential to foster dialogue and negotiation, as seen in the détente between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Borders also serve as mirrors, reflecting our deepest fears and aspirations. They reveal our desire for security and stability, but they also expose our anxieties about difference and change. The Berlin Wall, a powerful symbol of division during the Cold War, demonstrated the extent to which borders can embody ideological struggles. Its fall in 1989 marked not only the end of an era, but also a moment of hope, as it reminded the world that borders, no matter how formidable, can be overcome. We build borders because they are essential to the human experience. They help us define who we are, protect what we value, and navigate the complexities of coexistence. Yet borders are not fixed, they are fluid, shaped by the forces of history, culture, and power. As we confront the challenges of the 21st century, migration, climate change, and geopolitical rivalry, we must grapple with the dual nature of borders, their capacity to both divide and unite. Ultimately, the history of borders is a history of humanity itself, a testament to our ingenuity, our fears, and our relentless quest for meaning and connection in an ever-changing world. Whether we build walls or bridges, the choices we make about our borders will continue to define our shared future.